You know, sometimes during praise and worship, it just goes past the things you're feeling and thinking and life circumstances, and it's almost like a peace just overcomes you that you don't really remember the baggage you walked in with. God really wants us to live like that all the time. That's the peace that passes all understanding, when it doesn't make sense and God just overwhelms you with peace to cover the stress that you're dealing with. That's a way of life that we have to fight for. We have to fight to keep that peace. I know that sounds silly, but we really do. We have to protect ourselves for that peace. If you have your Bibles this morning, go ahead and let's go to the book of Acts. Not last week, week before last, we're kind of picking up where we left off there. We preached out of Acts 16 to finish that chapter off, a message entitled Not What You Think, about how the church in Philippi started. And it really wasn't what you would think, because a really rich fashionista kind of lady, a demon-possessed little girl, and a blue-collar jailer were the foundational members of the church in Philippi. And they all met Christ on a different avenue. Some through the intellect, some through just deliverance, and some through just felt needs and ministry to family. And all of them came to know the Lord. And what happened, a lot of this ending part, the last person, the whole ministry part started in jail. You know, we preach a lot about Paul and Silas singing and praying at midnight and the chains fall off. Well, we don't ever tell the rest of the story when we celebrate that. The rest of the story was the chains fell off and they stayed in prison. That was what ministered to the guy to get him to receive the gospel, because he literally saw that they didn't leave prison with the chains off and said, how can I know this Jesus? That's weird. That's like wearing a Christian t-shirt and somebody go, I want to know that Christ. I mean, it's these things that you don't think would happen. Okay. That's how it happened, and it's not what you would think. But here's the deal. They finally got out of prison because this guy let them out. He had the authority to let them out. He let them out of prison, and they go to his house. Everybody gets saved, he and his family. And then they go back and visit this small ragtag church that they had. And then they leave. And that's what we're going to pick up in chapter 17. Chapter 17, today's message is called this, The Power of Surroundings. This will make a little more sense as we go on. But how many of you would know, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit of the story. Rod sent me a video yesterday, the day before, I don't know, it was a couple of days ago, about, and the video title was simply this, everything we know about addiction is wrong. Yeah. And I was like, huh. Well, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. Anybody that wants me to share that video with you, I will, because it's like a 14-minute video. And it will really rock your world when you watch it, because you go, dang, that's what grace does. Grace changes the environment, because the heart thing only Jesus can do. Right. Yeah. Like, so if Jesus can break generational curses, he can heal addiction. If he can cure cancer, he can heal addiction. Yes. The thing is, we have everything twisted towards a punishment version, which is basically a picture of religion. We ostracize addicts and we criminalize addicts and we make things very tough because you've made some bad choices. And this study was saying, if you flip that around and actually created community, a new life around a person that's made bad choices, then the power of change would be dramatic. And simply, that's grace. That's what the early church was doing. It was a whole change of environment. One day you worshiped idols, the next day you worshiped Jesus, and everybody around you did. That's why the church all moved in together. I'm not suggesting we do that. I mean, I love y'all, but we'll keep it in proximity. Let's dive into the text. It'll make a little bit more sense because environment is powerful. Now, when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. And Paul went in, as was his custom, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that it was necessary for the Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead, and saying, this Jesus, like this Jesus, the one we just sang about, this Jesus, whom I proclaim to you is the Christ. And this is key right here. Some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a great many of the devout Greeks, and not a few of the leading women. But the Jews were jealous. And taking some wicked men of the rabble, they formed a mob. And set the city in an uproar and attacked the house of Jason. This is going to be the first time you've ever seen this guy's name in the Scriptures. This guy Jason. But Jason, according to theologians, Jason is one of the 70 that Jesus sent out. He was a Jewish Christian convert that lived in Thessalonica. And ever since the gospel had gone forth, he had been connected to these guys, to the apostles, and lived in Thessalonica as a Christian. Like one of the original guys. This is just a little bit of backstory on Jason. But they attacked the house of Jason, seeking to bring them out to the crowd. And when they could not find them, am I getting ahead of the things? No. Okay. When they could not find them, they dragged Jason and some of the brothers before the city authorities, shouting, I love this, these men who have turned the world upside down have come here also, and Jason has received them. And they are all acting against the decrees of Caesar, saying, there is another king, Jesus. It sounds a lot like when Jesus got attacked, right? The Jews are stirring up city authorities, Roman government, to say, they're saying there's another king, one that's bigger than you, one that's bigger than Caesar, and his name is Jesus. And that's what these guys are saying. So they're really setting these guys up. And the people and the city authorities were disturbed when they heard these things. And when they had taken money as security from Jason and the rest, they let them go. Here's basically what happened. Jason and all the believers in Thessalonica are just doing what they do. They're not praying 24/7. They're living life. They're meeting together. They're praying together. They're eating together. And they're breaking the word. They're doing regular life together. And then all of a sudden, Paul and Silas come into town. And Paul stirs up religious spirits. Because when Paul comes into town, he is coming with a message of grace and not works. And when he goes to speak to the Jewish leaders, they get upset. Jason and them fully expected Paul to do this. They didn't know how it was going to affect them. Because Paul and Silas just happened to not be there when the authorities came to get them. So what do the authorities do? They don't even mess with getting Paul and Silas. They just go after the closest thing like them, which is Jason. And Jason doesn't defend himself. He doesn't change his message. He doesn't try to make fit what would make them happy. He just handles it. And at the end of the story, what they do is they break out their wallets and pay their bail and get out. That's when they put down securities. It just means they posted bail. To say we're not going anywhere, I'm going to put some money down so that we can deal with this when we need to deal with it. It's not a problem. It's not an issue. But here's the issue. See, Paul and Silas are always coming against opposition. But Jason and the other brothers that come against opposition in this story shows me that we're not immune to it. And most people would say, well, you didn't have to point that out. I knew that. Now, we're not immune to things coming against us, just like Jason wasn't. But here's the thing. Can you bring me that? I need a brave volunteer. Come here, Chandler. Chandler, tell everybody your name.
I'm Chandler.
This is fun, ain't it? All right. You like milk?
Yeah.
Good. Say, all right. Here we go. All right. Now taste this and tell everybody honestly, how's this taste? You saw me open it. It's fresh.
I think it's pretty good.
All right, pretty good. He said it's pretty good. Now. You tell me when, Chandler. That's good. Now. You got to stir it. Stir it up, remember? If you weren't here last week, that don't mean as much. You got to stir it up. All right. Now, tell us how that tastes.
It's getting there.
Put it back in. Man. This joker's hard right here. It's like a little kid growing up. There ain't quite enough chocolate. Let's see now. You try it out. You can pick it up.
On the spot.
On the spot. That's good.
Yep. That's
Okay. Now look, I want to show you something. This milk would represent how God created us. See, this is natural. 100% natural. But it's also good. According to the word, it's very good. Because God created us naturally very good. But I want you to get something now. There's something called people of peace. Okay? That the chocolate represents. And when you add people of peace to your natural, very good life, it's, what did you say? On the spot. On the spot. Like it's very good plus some. Yeah. Because that's what happens when you add people of peace, very good people to very good people. Right. It's just really good. Right. Now.
No thanks.
No? That's bad. Be careful. That's weird tasting. That's not Windex. That's not Windex. That's Blue Powerade. But this represents toxic people. You notice really quickly something that was on point. He wouldn't touch it. I appreciate you, man. You want this? Finish that off. Thank you, Chandler. Because you want to try something? I don't care what you say. It's still hard to trust somebody with a Windex bottle to spray something in your mouth. But think about it. God created us naturally very good. He placed people strategically all around us that could actually add value to our life and make what's very good even better. But just a little bit of toxicity ruins the whole thing, right? That doesn't even make sense. Because that's saying that I can follow God's plan that He has for my life, and I can be sensitive to the people of peace around me. And things will go from very good to even better. Now, can anybody agree? I don't know, not many people have my story, but when God rips you out of the mud, out of a horrible situation, sets you in right standing and starts to just take off in your life, every day seems better than the last. And that's how very good gets better. You see what I'm saying? Because God places the right people in our life so that our environment changes, and we not only feel delivered, but we feel valued. And everything's different when we're busy, on purpose, with purpose, for a purpose. Because when we have purpose, not busyness, purpose. And when we're walking in purpose, it changes our whole outlook. Like, nothing really affects people with purpose. Do they have bad days? Absolutely. Do they have bad seasons? Absolutely. Do they trip and fall? Absolutely. But it's like a story that Mike and Meg and Miss Susie have told me for years about this preacher in Gadsden that was up on a podium preaching, and they had a little hole in the stage back behind him where the band was. And he was preaching and getting fired up and moving around a lot. And if you ever could imagine this happening to somebody, it would cause you not to move around a lot on stage. Because there was a big hole in the back of the stage, and he is preaching and moving around, and all of a sudden he steps back into the hole. Falls. Crash, boom. And you think that's horrible, but they said the guy gets up and didn't even mention the fact that he had fallen. He said, I know that you're thinking about me falling, but did you see me get back up? Because that's not what we focus. We don't focus on the fall as Christians. We can focus in confidence saying, but did you see me get back up? Because here's what I'm not going to do. I've already got a pattern designed by God strategically. And we're going to see more of this in chapter 17. But God has created me. That's difficult for a lot of us to say. God has created me naturally very good. Now, for some of y'all, it's not hard for you to say that. Because some of y'all really love y'all. And I can hang out with you for a little while, and I can know who it is. Because I've worked with some guys that even in lawn care, we're dirty, stinky people out there in the middle of the summer. And I've known guys that will walk by a truck or anything that has a reflection in it and just be like... And you think way too much of yourself if you're doing that all the time. But God did create you naturally very good. He did it for all of us. Just, you don't have to let everybody know that. You have to know it for yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's what you have to know. And it has nothing to do with the way you look. It has everything to do with the way God made you. Because He put everything you'll ever need in you when you were created. Like when you were born out of your mom's womb, you were exactly perfect for the plan God had for you. Amen. Everything had already been placed in you. Everything was going to germinate and come to fruition. A lot of the timing has been messed up by our choices because God made us naturally very good. He placed these amazing people in proximity to us that all we have to do is add this to our life, and our life goes from very good to even better. So why in the world do we allow people to spray Windex in our chocolate milk? Because Windex ain't good in chocolate milk. I just tried it. Well, I mean, my version. But Windex isn't good for anything except for cleaning windows. Well, I mean, a few other things. It just depends on what kind of clean freak you are. But it's not good with chocolate milk, and it's not good to spray directly in your mouth. You trust me? He said, yeah, I trust you. Not like that. But we do that as people. We have a very good situation. And we're naturally bent. I say we. I'm not saying you. I'm saying we, me. We're naturally bent. And let me ask you this, Aunt. Does this even look attractive? I mean, you got chocolate milk and you got Windex. Like, there's nothing even appealing about this unless I'm going to clean windows. Now, but how many times have I made the choice to say, you know what? This is how I'm going to do it. Knowing that these two things don't mix, and knowing that historically what they've done to me, I'll still make a choice to allow. See, this is not you bringing toxic things into your life. I want you to understand that. You don't go looking to hurt yourself. But oh my, how smart the enemy is. Because the enemy knows what has hurt Scott historically. And the enemy knows that all he has to do is make something look, oh man, it's not Windex, it's really Powerade. Are you tracking with me?
Right.
In my proximity.
Right.
Because he knows me.
Right.
And I might have one or two no's in me.
Come on.
But I'm not really able to say no. Because I haven't changed my perspective. All I'm really doing is fighting a yes.
Yeah.
And I've got about 2 or 3 of these. I know me. I got about 2 or 3 of these in me. And unless I change my environment,
That's right.
I'm never going to be able to say no until I change my environment. When I change my environment, it'll no longer look attractive to me. Because it's not conducive to my surroundings.
Right.
And that lets me know that my surroundings are very powerful.
That's true.
That's why being in this room is not a religious check on a box that I do on Sunday. Being in this room is part of my freedom walk. Because I get to be around a bunch of people that are Jesus with skin on. And I've changed my surroundings to help me. When I'm in gospel community, I've made a choice to put the Windex up. Because the devil is going to always come, and the devil's always going to try to spray toxicity in my chocolate milk. And it don't take but a little bit of poison to mess it all up. And that's what negativity will do. Can you imagine you have the best news on the planet, the gospel, taking it to areas that people have never heard it before, the best news ever. And there's people that are toxic trying to change that. They're really just going against Caesar. I mean, Paul, Silas, these guys aren't out looking for this. But every time they open their mouth to preach, somebody's squirting Windex in it. Because the Bible even says, because the religious people of the day were jealous. I don't know what they could be jealous of. It's the greatest news ever. And they were so determined not to accept it that they would burn in hell before they would believe it. And I just wonder how many people in our surroundings are chocolate milk and how many people are Windex. Because we have an opportunity each and every day to change our surroundings. Because here's the thing. You stay around Windex long enough, you become Windex. That you'll get on the way home. Because if you have people poison your mind enough, you'll begin to poison the mind of other people because you will become the thing that you hate right now if you stay around it. See, when you came in, when I came in this morning, I noticed it when we came in. Meg's mentioned it to me 27 times since worship started. It's a little warm in here. And you know why it's warm in here? Not because the thermometer's broke. Because you can have a broke thermometer and the air still work. You can't have a broke thermostat. If a thermostat goes out, you can't control the air. Well, you just turn it on wide open and let it rip. That would make sense to me, but it just don't work like that. The thing is, Jason, Paul, Silas, all the brothers back then, were not thermometers. They were thermostats. Like, they didn't just tell you it's hot. They changed the temperature. So when Windex came around, they just changed it into Powerade. Because even though Powerade don't really go with chocolate milk, it ain't going to hurt you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Even though Powerade might not taste good out of a Windex bottle, it still ain't going to hurt you. Right. And a thermostat can change it because you can change your surroundings. That's one choice you have. And to change your surroundings changes everything else. Because God's in control of this. Now, the power of a thermostat is not in us. You have to understand that part. The power of a thermostat is not in us. It's been placed in us in Christ. So the power of change on surroundings is really in Christ. He's the one that structured it. He's the one that placed the gift in us. This is part of the stirring up process. So what does this look like? I have to use a story from the Bible. Because we can just do life every day. And I hate to vent and rant and rabbit trail, but one of my pet peeves and one of my fears in life is that too many Christians do that. Too many Christians live their life with their fists clenched, hoping that they can just make it until Jesus comes back. And that's good. It's just not God. Because Jesus is going to come back. And if you're a child of God, you're going with him, however that looks. Like, the church is going with Jesus. That's a fact. We're going to be with him forever. But if he's promised us life and life abundantly now, why should we live halfway now, hoping for a tomorrow? That's a messed up Christian mentality that, of course, we hope for tomorrow. We look for tomorrow. But I'm going to live today. Because I'll ask yourself this. What did these early apostles do? Did they just sit around saying God's going to take care of me? No, these guys did it. Like, they were doing life. Because I'm going to tell you one thing that's proven in the text right here. I didn't even see this till I was reading it last night and it jumped out at me. You know what happened when they went to jail? They made bail. You don't make bail without a job. Like, these guys were doing life. You know what I'm saying? They weren't just hoping for a better tomorrow, saying that Christ is going to fix everything when he finally comes back. He was going to fix it at the cross. That should be the mentality of the Christian, that everything was fixed at the cross/resurrection, and we can walk in total freedom today. But we've got to walk. He did the work, we do the walking. So we walk and trust him to change the surroundings, because believe me, the enemy is not going to stop with the Windex. Like, the enemy is still going to send people to try to kill, steal, and destroy in your life. And that's sad, man. I mean, I'm a Christian. Why is the enemy even allowed into my life? Well, he's not. He's in violation. But he can strategically use other people to speak negativity in your life, because some of them don't even know Jesus. And the people that don't know Jesus are very easily used by the enemy. If you've ever used drugs, you know this. My life went from good to bad to very bad, back to good to worse it's ever been. And I have to tell you a little bit of the story. What happened was, when I was growing up, my life was good. I made a bunch of bad choices and went bad. So bad that I went to prison, very bad. Got out of prison doing really good. For about 3 or 4 months, doing very good. Thought I was going to get my life back together. Made a few decisions about my surroundings. Let some Windex into my life. And my life got worse than it had ever been, ever. And then I met Wayman. Chocolate milk. That was good. That was good. He said it. Hey, the illustration fit. That was good. And I'm telling you, if you want to know what a very good life looks like when you add chocolate milk, it's very, very good. And every day gets better. Like, even the bad days today are better than the best days then. I want to keep living that way. And I really think that most of us want to keep living that way. So how did Jason and the people that were in his house, and Paul and Silas, and so many of the early church in the book of Acts, how did they do it? Because if we're going to be able to do it, because I could come up with some kind of 12-step thing that you could, do to keep toxic people out of your life. But when they come, they come. So how do you become a thermostat and not just a thermometer? In the book of 2 Kings, the prophet Elisha is with his guy, the guy that helps him. I don't know what they're called. But the guy is like his servant or something. And they're surrounded. Like, the enemy has them completely surrounded. And Elisha's not freaking out. The servant guy is. He's scared to death. But Elisha's real calm. And I just wonder, in our life, how many people have made decisions, or know people that have made decisions, or possibly even one decision that feel like Windex. Because here's what can happen in our life. We do that enough, it's hard to bounce back because you feel surrounded. You feel like you've completely boxed yourself in with bad decisions. And you're kind of like Elisha's servant. I find myself in that place quite often. You feel like Elisha's servant because you look out and all you see is the enemy. You see bad choices. You see things that want to destroy you all the way around you. And then you look at the chocolate milk people in your life, and they're not freaked out. They're calm. Why is that? What's interesting in the story is this. Elisha knows that they're surrounded by the enemy. But when he looks out the window, he sees something different than the servant guy does. See, when the servant guy looks out the window, he sees the enemy. Elisha looks out the window and he sees the enemy, and then he sees what's surrounding the enemy. And he knows that you might be surrounded by either bad choices, enemies of your soul, and you may feel helpless. But the same way Elisha did, I want us to pray together today that God would open our eyes in the spirit, that we would see we may be surrounded, but God has that surrounded. So you can never be boxed in by something that God has surrounded.
That's good.
The enemy might have you surrounded, but God's got the enemy surrounded. And the encampment that God has is so much more powerful. Here's what I want us to do as we're ending today.